Hello, welcome. We're going to give it just a minute while everyone joins. Hi, everyone. We're going to give it just 1 minute until everyone joins. All right, welcome to Shaping the Future of Work with People First Recruiting. I'm going to share some content. Okay. All right, so as we get started today, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. A couple of quick housekeeping items for us. Today's agenda, we'll do a bit of an introduction. We're going to have a really robust panelist discussion while we go through some of the metrics and results from the Recruiter Nation report. We will take some live Q&A today. In terms of housekeeping, and we've added it in the chat, this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be shared automatically with everyone via email after the event today. Closed captioning is available for individuals who would like to leverage it. You can click the show captions icon on your toolbar. And finally, questions can be asked throughout the webinar. We do ask that you use the Q&A tool in your Zoom toolbar. All right. Without further ado, so, today we're going to actually be exploring some key themes, some data and insights from the Employee Recruiter Nation report for 2024. So in case you aren't familiar with that report, the Employee Recruiter Nation report highlights survey results from 1,200 talent acquisition professionals and includes proprietary data from more than 22,000 of our customers. So this survey is conducted by a third-party provider, Zogby Analytics, and the report spans all the way back to 2021. This is actually a sister report to our Job Seeker Nation report, and it's widely recognized in the market. We want to introduce our panelists today. Obviously, I am Stephanie Manzelli. I am the Chief People Officer of Employ. Our panelists today are George LaRocque, the founder and Chief Analyst at WorkTech, Jason Pistulka, the AVP of Talent Acquisition at HCA Healthcare, and Terry Terhark, the founder and CEO of NXTThing RPO. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
so diving right in. Competition for quality candidates is really high. The results from the Employee Recruiter Nation report revealed that there's a lot of competition for talent. 37% of respondents state that the biggest recruiting challenge their company faces is competition from other employers. So there's simultaneously not enough people to fill open positions and too many candidates for open positions. This illustrates the challenge that TA professionals face today with finding what we think is quality candidates. And frankly, it underscores the importance of skills-based hiring. So to kick us off today, Jason, how are you leading through this challenge?
Yeah, at HCA, given that our biggest skill gaps have come in the clinical spaces, largely need to be filled with more education of our candidates. So we made a bold move a few years ago to purchase the Galen College of Nursing, which at the time had 4 campuses, and we have since then expanded that to 23 campuses. So we're one of the largest producers of nursing talent right now. And in addition to that, we're extending that into the clinical tech space with workforce development programs that actively recruit candidates to come into training programs and to continue to build those talents. There are opportunities in HCA for more traditional skill-based hiring, but it's typically more in the non-clinical spaces where there's not licensure requirements, and assessed and inferred skills can have a bigger role. But those are really less difficult places for us to fill, so that hasn't been at the front of our efforts. But healthcare is quickly moving beyond the skills-based hiring to what I like to call skill-building hiring. And there's actually a number of startups that are focused in this space, like WorkUp Health and WAPA AI, that are doing some really interesting work to try to help groom the basically high school grads into these opportune roles as we move forward.
Got it. That's fascinating. Just on that same thread, right? So when we think about the skills-based hiring component, George, Terry, why don't we start with Terry? How do you see skills-based hiring helping in this particular area and with this challenge?
Yeah, for sure, Stephanie. I think skills-based hiring has become popular since the pandemic, when we had the labor market challenges. And according to SHRM and NACE, between 50 and 70% of companies are now either beginning or have begun using skills-based hiring, for their selection process. What it does, I think, is it widens the available pool of candidates for you. It can certainly deliver a better role fit when you're screening for skills versus specific education or specific background, specific companies that they've worked for. We've heard that it delivers better outcomes over credentials. So when you're looking at skills versus a particular company that they may have worked for, it absolutely delivers the best job fit candidate. It also helps with diversity. So when you're looking at just skills, there's not as much bias in that from pedigrees or certain types of companies, et cetera. So there's a lot of benefits to be able to use skills-based hiring.
George? I love that.
Yeah, I see all of that. I think one of the key things that skills-based hiring does by zeroing in on either the hard skill that's needed, or in some cases the durable skill, or I hate the term soft skills, but that's what the industry says. But behavioral type skills, you're able to improve what many of us think of as quality of hire. So by taking someone who maybe has the baseline of hard skills, but has the ability to learn, is agile, can adapt to a changing environment. And let's face it, we're all seeing a lot of change right now. You're able to put someone on that path of learning and challenge that keeps them there longer many times. So it's I think skills-based hiring can mean a lot of things to a lot of different folks, but I think if we focus on getting away from the resume and into sort of the core of what's needed from all perspectives, we've seen it be a real 10x factor sort of for quality.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you've all said. I think the concept of skills-based hiring, it even underscores the importance of that kind of behavioral-based interviewing component, right? You really got to get under the experiences that a candidate has had to make sure that you can make a skills match. So I thank you for all of your responses. As we continue to thread the needle of competition for quality candidates, some of the findings from our report, the challenge for finding quality candidates is also the reason that 48% of TA professionals we surveyed have increased stress today. It's an interesting metric. And 44% are also stressed with more open roles to fill. And as we continue to look at this, 34% chose competition from another employer as sort of the reason for that increased stress. So really, not too surprisingly, the TA challenges and stressors, they mirror each other. I guess this question is to everybody. George, we'll start with you. How do you alleviate the pressure that's being put on HR and TA teams?
Well, I think HR leaders, TA leaders are can be their own best advocate. I think having, from a TA perspective, bringing the hiring team into the conversation and enabling them, and there may be a technology play here in order to allow your team to get more engaged across the hiring organization, the folks that are doing the interviews, but getting them, enabling them to take on more over time of the process themselves. I'm seeing that as a big trend, whether it's leveraging technology or whether it's positioning the recruiter or TA leader as that sort of counsel to the hiring manager, and the hiring team, through the process. Whether it's leveraging technology like AI and other tools, or whether it's having a process that enables that pulls that organization into that conversation, I think it it'll allow some of that burden to be shared and process to move more fluid.
Yeah. Jason, what about you?
Yeah, for us, it's really a multi-pronged approach. First, we have a very robust recruitment marketing function that we actually built on top of former telemetry, now JobVite, years ago, and a very capable and enhanced sourcing team that uses that CRM. We've also stood up offshore functions for some sourcing, and along with the kind of clinical education programs I spoke of earlier. But the last is working closely with compensation teams to ensure that we're making market adjustments. As everybody has experienced, mostly since COVID, there's been a lot of market movement in compensation. And these things together, although they don't magically solve the problem, we constantly measure the effectiveness of these efforts, and we adjust our focus as we need to.
Great. What about you, Terry?
Yeah, just a few comments. I've had the privilege of working with thousands and thousands of recruiters over the course of my career. And, I find that recruiters get stressed when they have too few requisitions, and definitely stressed when they have too many requisitions. I also think it's an interesting dichotomy right now on the first topic. There are jobs where there's not enough candidates, and there's jobs where there's, far too many candidates. I was talking to a candidate the other day, and they had posted their resume to a position, came back 24 hours later, there were over 1,000 people that applied for that job. It was a recruiter. So there's a plethora of recruiters on the market. I do think it highly depends on what industry you're in and the positions that you're recruiting for. But, there's really very few things you can do to level the load for recruiters. Number one, hire more recruiters, which companies, often that's a delicate balance in terms of, is this a temporary blip, or is this, an ongoing need that we're going to have? I found that if you can align similar requisitions to recruiters, that they, can take on more requisitions. I will also say that, if I were to tie recruiter satisfaction to one key topic, to me, it is recruiter rec load. Having the right rec load, I think, is a direct correlation to recruiter happiness. I really like the sourcing. If you could apply sourcing behind the recruiter so that the candidates are being supplied to them, one of the most time-consuming things that a recruiter does is sourcing. And whether you use a technology solution or you utilize resources to help the recruiter, both of those can be quite effective in kind of reducing overall stress.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank all of you. I agree with everything that you've said. I think there's also this really interesting component about your HR tech stack. How are you leveraging your tools and technology in a way that is seamless and super efficient for your recruiting teams? How are you using your tools where you're not inserting extra steps in the process or overly complicating interactions with the business and with candidates? For sure, I think that's another place that you can take a look at and see, are your processes efficient? And speaking of technology, as we start to think about AI, which, is the buzzword of the day, AI has been talked about for years, but I think more and more, we're really seeing more adoption of AI. And, from the results of our survey, 63% of those surveyed already use some form of AI, and 39% saw decreased stress due to the involvement of AI-powered recruitment technologies. I think what this is saying to us is AI can be crucial when recruiting teams are lean, and they are right now, Terry, to your point. But I think, there's this piece of it where it's important to balance the use of AI by using it where recruiters need it most, and kind of leaving those hiring decisions to the expert. Ultimately, keeping the integrity of the human element in recruiting. One of the things I always say is, there's an art and a science to everything in HR and in TA, and the science is the tools and technology, but the art is sort of that human element, that human overlay, and that's where our recruiters come in. Jason, I'm curious. Firstly, is your team using and embracing AI, and if so, how?
Sure. Our biggest AI use case that we have today is with conversation quality. So we use sophisticated tools to record candidate conversations, both whether those be phone screens or offer calls. all that gets transcribed, and AI creates beautiful notes that we can share with the hiring manager. And we also have tools that help assess the quality of that conversation to help with the coaching of recruiters. So we're not actually assessing the candidate's answers in any way. We're assessing how well the recruiter is doing those screens or those offer extensions. This also keeps a searchable record of all those calls that we can do rediscovery in the future, or to ensure that if more than one recruiter is talking to a candidate, we can have kind of seamless transitions because the recruiters can see those previous calls. But our goal really is to help close the skill gap between our most junior recruiters and our most senior recruiters, and provide really a better candidate experience and a higher throughput of the hires. And we have multiple other AR efforts that we're working on, and we have some early prototypes on, but we're really working on how do we get more candidates to the right job, not anywhere in the selection process, to really, assess the candidates themselves.
Great. And George, from your perspective, how does AI help efforts to build human connections?
Well, AI certainly offers a lot of possibilities here. There isn't sort of a one path, and some of it's dependent on, are you in a high volume recruiting environment, a frontline recruiting environment? Are you recruiting, knowledge workers? Are you recruiting folks remotely or in an office? So, how you apply AI will vary, and the tools you use will vary. But if you think about what AI does really well, it looks at large volumes of data. It may be text, it may be data from your recruitment system, and it does a good job in summarizing data. It does a good job in automating transactions like prompting. It does a good job in personalizing. So some of the ways that I might use it, I would look at that recruiter as, a key stakeholder in this human connection with the candidates. And, based on candidate behavior, based on data that we have on a candidate or on your talent pool, we have the ability to prompt recruiters to reach out, or the system can do some simple outreach, and then prepare the recruiter for the conversation with a summary of, the process that the candidate's been through so far, in preparing hiring managers or interview teams, giving them more than a resume and previous scorecards, but context around the candidate. I think personalization on the candidate side, we're still putting a lot of energy, as we should, into candidate experience, and the ability to, I love the thought about getting the right jobs to the candidates, based on their match, based on their responses, and based on their skills and overall fit based on whatever data that you have. So AI can be super helpful in establishing that connection. But to your point, the humans still are probably the best vehicle for connection.
Yeah, for sure. That's true. One of the things you mentioned early in your response was, it's obviously dependent on your industry, your environment. And one of the things that you mentioned was high volume. And Terry, I know that's kind of your sweet spot. So what's your take on this? How do you think that AI can help?
Yeah, for sure. I think I might want to state my position on AI first, which, I believe that the role of the recruiter will never go away. I like you, Stephanie. I believe that recruiting is an elegant balance of human interaction and technology. I also, when we talk to clients, caution them to understand what is automation and what is AI. To me, automation is when you tell the computer to do something and it follows your instructions, whereas AI learns from the data that it's collected and then makes inferences from that data. But I do think that AI can help in many ways, particularly in a high volume scenario. It can absolutely process candidates, to George's point, much quicker, and allow you to interact with the people that are actually the best job fit candidates. So the recruiter is spending time with those candidates that actually meet the qualifications, and not, wasting their time on those that do not. I also believe that it makes it much easier for the candidates to apply. Therefore, you have more people, theoretically more people, particularly in high volume scenarios. The easier you can make the process, the more candidates you're going to get, which allows the recruiter to have more choices, more interactions with the actual individuals, with the candidates.
Yeah. I loved hearing you say, Terry, the role of the recruiter. You don't think it's going anywhere. I agree with that. I think, from my perspective and being in sort of the TA space, which is, our bread and butter, I think that AI is something that can aid our recruiters in doing their jobs and doing them better. But it should be the lifeblood of your product. It should be like DNA, something that's always operating. It's not a feature that needs to be turned on or turned off. So, so I loved hearing some of these responses. But, I think, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I want to add one comment.
Yeah,
I was at a conference recently, and obviously AI is everywhere, and it comes up all the time. One of the presenters talked about their use of AI, and they're using 9 different AI technologies. They're a Workday shop. And I asked the question afterwards, how many of the platforms are integrated with Workday? And they said 0. I said, well, that sounds awful. But, we go from that extreme to, I was meeting with a CHRO from a financial services company, which is driven by compliance and regulation. Their position on AI and recruiting was, we are going to wait for everybody else to experiment. And once we understood that bias has been eliminated from AI, then we'll jump in. So we really do have these variants of opinions in terms of, what risk companies are willing to take and what other ones are willing to jump right in. It's moving so fast right now, as we all know, and there's literally technologies that are becoming available every day.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think that's perfectly timed because we want to run a quick audience poll. How are the recruiters on this call? How is your team using AI to support recruiting efforts? Is it through candidate matching or intelligent sourcing? Is it chatbots or messaging? Even job recommendations on the career site, or frankly, what other options? We'll give a second for everybody to respond. These results are fascinating. Candidate matching is reigning supreme right now, followed pretty close by intelligent sourcing. Wow. Great. All righty. Okay. All right. So if we want to move forward, moving forward to data and analytics, being built into the tech stack. So, recruiting technology, it can give us hours back in our TA times week by making things like pulling reports easier and serving up insights really quickly. We learned that through our survey, 84% of those who were surveyed use analytics, but only 87% of those using analytics, staggering 87% of those that are using analytics are still using spreadsheets, and 71% are pulling reports bi-weekly or weekly. So that's pretty consistent data polls. Jason, how do you tie recruitment back to overall business results and kind of provide that visibility to your C-suite and to your board about the value creation?
Well, the interesting thing is I don't really need to, because we spend 50% of our revenue on labor. So like it or not, the tie is really clear. And the drive comes from the leadership. Labor and hiring is discussed practically in every quarter shareholder call. Many times I think our CEO at HCA may know recruiting data better than I do. Because they're that deep into it. So we make sure that our recruiting teams align to the greatest needs of the business. Sometimes that's bed closures. Sometimes that's contract labor expenses, because these are monitored very closely by our board and the analyst community. But we do have a pretty robust dashboard system that's built and teams that work on that. But inevitably, it does not matter how many dashboards you build. Somebody always wants data to look a little bit different. And everybody has to have a certain amount of spreadsheet jockey in them to be able to satisfy those needs. So it's a constant balance for us to try to get to standardized reports that everybody can agree on and accept as acceptable for their needs versus customization that sometimes is just inevitable.
That's true. That's fair. It's very fair. Terry, I'm really curious, what opportunities do you see here? I mean, are you seeing data play a larger role in the TA reporting and budgeting process, especially in the high volume space?
I would say definitely. And, we've noticed this for the last several years that there's an insatiable need from talent acquisition leaders to be able to synthesize all their data and be able to present it to the C-suite. To Jason's point, the labor challenges that we saw in 21, 22 really put a spotlight on, how are we dealing with, labor and how we bring into the organization, are we competitive? We've also seen a number of really good tools become available that provide insights into the labor markets. And what we found is that we can equip our recruiters with tools to understand the labor market, supply and demand, compensation data, pressure on that particular function or skill set. They now become an advisor to the hiring manager, and they're providing data to the hiring manager to make the process easier. So you want to be able to educate that hiring manager so that you have a better experience. I will say that, if there's anything, we have so much access to data. Like, we have all these systems, and I think key for talent acquisition leaders is to be able to pull that data into one platform so you can then be able to use that data, for your dashboard. I think a lot of companies struggle with all these disparate systems, and how do we put them together, and how do we provide the business with the information that it needs.
Yeah, that's very insightful. George, what's your take here?
Yeah, I mean, I love both of those answers. I think in healthcare and high volume, to Jason's point, when the talent has such a direct tie to revenue, and when retention has such a direct tie to revenue, you find, the CFO and the CEO are talking your language. They're at your table, that you're not competing to be there with them. But what we're seeing more broadly this year, and this is our data at WorkTech, but also every other analyst that I've looked at, is there's a real hunger for help with analytics. And a part of this is, we've asked talent acquisition leaders and TA teams to be recruiters, to be marketers, to be data analysts, to be project managers. So, and I could keep going on and on. And let's face it, we don't all have all of those skills. None of us have all of those strengths, I should say. So right now, the plans to adopt tools and technology that will help with analytics, especially as we're looking down the barrel of AI, where data is so important, that's high on everybody's list. So I think, sort of connected to the AI conversation, what I like to say is, I agree wholeheartedly with Terry's viewpoint, and Steph, your viewpoint on the role technology plays and the role humans play. But I like to say that, the changes are either going to happen through you or happen to you. And I think analytics and data and leveraging AI in that capacity is a great place to do a couple of things. One, accelerate your ability to get access to metrics that you need, and number two, learn. So, I'm a spreadsheet jockey. I spend a lot of time with a lot of data, and I've been using AI, and it's amazing I love the things that I don't have to do anymore. I don't have to know how to create the formulas or the pivot tables. And I think most TA leaders know the questions they need answered, but don't necessarily know where the data sits to get the answers. And that's a place where if you can start now in leveraging analytics tools to help help you answer those questions, you're going to be so far ahead, and that change will be happening through you. You'll be leading the organization, hopefully not feeling the impact of it.
I love that. I love that. Jason, you had said something when you were talking. You're very fortunate in that your business automatically understands the correlation to the value. One of the things that we've implemented and that I've recommended throughout my career is taking a look at some of the metrics associated with loss in revenue as a result of vacancy, time to hire, how we can leverage AI to speed up that process or improve the candidate experience and kind of bring that full circle. And we saw some of that through the research that we did. AI can support speed and flexibility in the recruiting process. And we discovered that 47% of survey respondents were focused on making sure that their hiring process was faster. 44% are incorporating AI-powered technologies, which is a 10% increase from last year, which is pretty significant. And we're seeing an increase in speed for employee customers. In the last 12 months alone, our time to fill over our customers has decreased by an average of 7 days. So going from 48 days in 2023 to 41 days as of now. And I think that's astonishing. So as I look to all of you in very different industries and very different experiences, I think my big question here is, what are you each seeing as the catalysts to speeding up the hiring process and frankly ensuring that organizations don't lose, quality candidates to the competition? Is it AI powered technologies changing the game, or is it more nuanced than that? George, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Sorry, I was muted there. I think it is nuanced. I think that's a good way to put it. I do see, especially in larger enterprises, a lot of pressure from the top to look at efficiency, and it's not necessarily a mandate to implement AI, but it's more of a mandate to get our head around where we can apply the technology to be more efficient, to help speed the process along. I think Terry made a really good point, earlier about waiting can be a good strategy when things are moving so fast, right? We always want to be the sort of first to market, get that market mover advantage, and you may see some of that by applying some of these tools quickly in order to speed the process up. But you've got to be really careful, because you've got to be picking the right tools. They need to be integrated into your tech stack. They need to be adopted by your internal users. They need to provide a good experience with candidates, which means they need to have some scale and longevity in the market in order to keep growing and being there supporting you as a partner. So I'm not saying don't implement AI, but be very careful. Find spots to test it. And I think there are some great examples, especially in high volume or really skill sort of credential based hiring, where you can quantify a profile really quickly and then bring the human in the loop, as they say, to help get your brand in front of candidates more effectively, and almost use the AI throughout the process, things like scheduling, et cetera, that will free up the recruiters and keep the process moving.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Terry, I'm super curious from your perspective, how do you not lose quality candidates to the competition?
Well, and if I could maybe just respond to what George was saying first, that there really is a wide range of ways that AI or technology can cut time from the process. There are several companies who are very high volume hirers. I'm talking over 100,000 hires a year, high seasonal hiring, who have hiring down to minutes. So, and they've measured it where They have candidate apply to 9 minutes, a candidate offer within 24 minutes. And that is doing wonders for them. And you're seeing more and more companies going to a totally automated solution for very, very high volume type scenarios. I think that technology and AI definitely can cut time from sourcing. I remember earlier in my career when I'd get on the call with a hiring manager, I'm going to go source, I'll get back to you in 10 days, I'll tell you what I'm finding, and now, you literally can do that in a matter of a couple days. We're also seeing some really good movement with interview scheduling technology. I, for one, I've over the years heard that this is the most complex, especially for knowledge workers, when you have 9 people interviewing 9 candidates, trying to get those schedules to work. But there's some really good technology that's coming out there that is aiding in interview scheduling. And I think whatever you can do at the back end of the process not to lose people, have an onboarding process that is easy to use, kind of self-instructed, because if a candidate gets stuck in onboarding and they don't have a person that they can go to, they're going to give up. So, those are the areas where I think we're seeing fundamental movement and reduction in cycle time. And obviously we'll see more as time goes on.
Yeah, that's really helpful. One of the things you mentioned was companies that have, 6 figures in hiring annually. Jason, you may be close to that, if not over that. So give me your perspective on this.
Yeah, we're definitely in that 6-figure range and in a broad range of complexity of what we hire too, because of the nature of our business. The interesting thing for me in AI is when the models were released, every vendor out there suddenly became an AI company. Their boards were asking them what their AI strategy and was, and for many of them, their AI strategy was to redo their marketing materials. It really wasn't a real change. And I say that AI really has 2 different definitions, one being automated intelligence and the other one is automated ignorance. And you really want to make sure you're implementing the first and not the latter. So everybody rushes to HI as a solution often when automation options really exist within your current systems and yet go unused. So we're betting really high on automation to enhance our processes along the way. And that automation's in the scheduling, that's automation in helping with candidate dispositions and re-engagement and all those different kinds of things. That's not necessarily AI driven, but just, again, using the automation functionalities that exist within our system and bringing in additional automation technologies like Sense with a third-party vendor to further enhance the capabilities of our system, because so much of what we do, we know if A plus B happens, then we need C, right? That's a pretty simple automation formula that we can do, and doesn't necessarily require that it be AI. And so I always say automation first, machine learning second, AI third. And the other piece of that is just it avoids legal complications if you stay away from AI and a whole bunch of this, and that world's only going to get more complicated as we go forward. So we've really tried to be very diligent where we consider the use of AI, balancing the efficiency, the effectiveness, the legal, the candidate experience impacts, all in a real intentional and thoughtful way before we go launching anything in the company.
Yeah, that's extremely helpful. I think what I hear all of you saying, or one thing that's consistent is, it really depends. It depends on your business and how to best use it. And so I think it's a perfectly natural place, once again, for us to pause. We have another fun poll for the audience. How has your business become more flexible in its hiring processes? Making sure the hiring process is faster, incorporating AI tech, increasing salaries for new open jobs, or providing remote work and hybrid options? Answers are coming in great. Making sure our hiring process is faster is really reigning supreme in our votes so far. Providing some remote options, some hybrid options. Great. So really consistent polling responses to that of our, our study. Great. Yeah, 50%. Wow. All right. So that brings us to the next, kind of big rock from this study, which is the fully remote fading, a fully remote, being something that's fading. Offering remote and hybrid options, it does go a long way to supporting a more flexible hiring process, and it just hands down does edge out the competition. But that said, 40% of our respondents chose offering remote and hybrid options as a way that businesses are changing and becoming more flexible. That's significantly down. But when we asked respondents to look into 2025, 34% expect a 100% into return to office model. I apologize for stumbling over my words, which is a big shift over the last couple of years. This is significant considering just a year ago, the number was, 17. And only 9% expect a fully remote model, which is down from 20%. So we can see this is a stark contrast to years prior. To kind of start our Q&A section, Terry, how will a trend of 100% in office models impact the ability to attract candidates? I mean, could it be a potential challenge at the offer stage?
It absolutely can be, Stephanie, and it's an area that I'm completely passionate about. And, for context, we're 100% remote as an organization. So we have recruiters that sit everywhere. So we definitely have an opinion on this, but we also recruit for, all different types of organizations. I did a little bit of research on this because it's a topic I'm fascinated with, but only 10% of jobs on LinkedIn mention remote or hybrid or fully remote. But 46% of all applicants desire some type of remote environment. I fundamentally believe that people have spoken on this. They prefer to be hybrid or remote. Indeed has said that when they look across all of their postings, they get 1.6 times more candidates when hybrid or remote is mentioned in the job description. Now, we all understand that some jobs cannot be remote. They have to be done in office. For example, manufacturing, et cetera. We understand that. I do find this is largely CEO driven, that it tends to be something that the CEO is passionate about. And, we've been fortunate over the last 2 years that the pressures in the labor markets haven't been what they were back in 21, 22. And I think we'll see this kind of move back and forth depending on how pressured the labor markets are. But the more that companies, demand or require 100% in office, it definitely cuts the candidate pool, without a doubt.
Yeah. George, what's your perspective on this one?
I'm really well aligned with Terry on this. I'll give you a couple of things. One is an anecdote. There was a time, this goes back to the early 90s, and I subscribed to a magazine, and it was called Home Office Computing. And I subscribed to that magazine because I worked part of the time remotely, and it had all these, tools for, how I could be more efficient, more effective working remotely, which was like, nobody did it back then. But here's some data for you. So pre-pandemic in 2019, we did a survey. There were 3,500 responses. Half of them were from employers in all market segments. Half of them were from employees. And this is, again, pre-pandemic. And the big headline that came out of this survey was distributed work is the future. That was because, there was clearly, as there still is, a challenge finding talent, especially knowledge worker talent, skills that we need that aren't within a commutable radius. And about 60% of the employers and the employees mirrored this. So 60% of the employers said, we're offering some kind of flexibility in work arrangement for our employees, and it allows us to have a better recruitment strategy. And the employees said about 54% of their employers offer. So it lined up. It hasn't been 100%, in the office in a long time. And I think those that go back there, for some jobs, you have to go there and you just can't do them anywhere else. And for some people, they need the flexibility of going in every day because they don't want to be hybrid. They don't want to be remote, but it's distributed work is how you're going to be able to thrive in this business climate, this economy, at least for the foreseeable future. So I just think we like to throw the pendulum, swing it all to one end and then to the other. That's a little bit, as Terry said, of what we're seeing now.
I love that. Thank you. Before we close this one out, Jason, how are you approaching this conversation with your executive team?
Well, at HCA, the discussion with executives is not really so much a recruiting one as it is a broader HR one. But obviously in healthcare, much of this is decided by the role. I mean, we obviously can't provide patient care without being face-to-face. But HCA already had thousands of work from home employees pre-pandemic. Most of our revenue cycle team is remote and was remote before then. A large amount of IT and of course, practically our entire recruiting team. But we're still working to strike the proper balance between the 100% in office, the hybrid, and the 100% remote. But market availability of talent weighs really heavy into that decision. There's obviously a lot of technical talent. Even in this move back to more 100% in the office with companies, that if you aren't willing to hire them remote, you're just going to really suffer on the quality that you can get, and you're going to pay a lot more money for it. So we're constantly trying to find that appropriate balance.
That's helpful. That's helpful. Okay, as we wrap up our discussion today and take some candidate questions, some attendee questions, I just want to thank you all for taking time today to have this important discussion. I have a question before we hand it over to our audience members. If you had to choose one thing to recommend to everybody on this webinar that you're going to do in 2025 to evolve your people first recruitment strategy, what would it be? And I'll let you choose who goes first.
Well, I'll go first. And, I thought about this and I think about it a lot, because we're in our budget cycle. And, for me, it's about hiring more recruiters. As I said, I correlate recruiter satisfaction and absolutely recruiter retention to having an appropriate rec load. And when rec loads get too high, then you start to see recruiters go elsewhere. But beyond that, I think providing recruiters with the right tools, whether that's sourcing tools, whether that's labor market tools, whether it's support to help them throughout the process with transactions. It's about making sure that the recruiters are equipped to do what they're best at doing.
Great. What about you, Jason?
I'll jump in. Oh, go ahead. Good.
No, George, by all means, I apologize.
Well, no worries. I'll be real quick. This is maybe a novel idea, but I think you should ask your internal constituencies and your external, your candidates, what worked, what didn't work, what needs to improve, and put your energy there so that everyone involved in the process is having a better experience. You'll find yourself hiring people faster, and you'll find your team staying longer and being happier while they're doing it. I think we rush to solutions sometimes, and ask them; they'll tell you.
Right.
Yeah, just capitalizing on what George just said there. One of my favorite things for recruiters to ask a hiring manager in an intake session is just tell me about your last hire that you made and the experience. And you'll learn so much in that conversation of what you want to do and what you don't want to do next time, because either it was really good or really bad or some mix thereof. And I found where recruiters can gain a lot from that. In the high volume world, it's more challenging on the candidate front, because obviously white glove experience is hard to give in high volume. So we have to give it where we can. And, for us, a lot of that's like in our apply flow and ensuring that our apply is not painful and that we have a great apply experience. So we actually run NPS scoring on our apply flow. And score above a 60 NPS with our apply. So we're very happy with that, but we have to manage the experience where we can, and tweak and modify to make it better. And in many cases, you don't have to be exceptional in recruiting. You just have to be exceptional in your industry, because obviously there's a big difference between tech and financial services and retail in what candidate experience is. And you have to just make sure that you're outswimming the other swimmers, not outswimming the shark.
I love that. I love that. All right. Well, thank you all very much for appeasing me and answering my questions, but we have actually a ton of audience questions, and some of them are actually directed to each of you individually. So I'm going to get us started. Terry, this one's for you. So how do you ensure that qualified candidates aren't being erroneously declined by AI? This person's seen some examples of that where they feel that AI is sometimes rebranded and is declining people automatically.
Well, I'm here to say that AI does rule out people that are qualified. I think in selecting the tools or structuring the search in a way to be inclusive of the skill sets that you desire, I find it interesting that candidates have become quite adept at being able to manipulate resumes. I have a couple of younger kids who have recently gone through job searches, and was advising them on how to structure their resume, and everything gets run through AI for the most part in terms of what the screening is and skills matching and things like that. So you can ask ChatGPT, what skills should I include on my resume for XYZ position, which and then so candidates are actually doing that. I think to the extent that you're looking at those candidates that are being rejected, and making sure that the terms that you've chosen, particularly when you're using just AI, and by the way, like job boards are not perfect. They don't recommend the right jobs. They don't always recommend the best candidates. So I think it always requires some type of intervention or some type of review to make sure that you're getting the outputs that you desire, utilizing the technology that you are.
I love that. Thank you. Jason, how can I increase the number of people I reach out to while not seeming like a robot? I'm having trouble getting candidates to respond to my initial phone call or emails, and I need to increase the number of people I contact. But I don't want it to sound like an automated message because I'm afraid if it does, they won't answer.
Well, a couple things there. One of the things I've always looked at with recruiters, like when you're using LinkedIn, is profiles viewed to in-mail sent, right? You'll see a lot of times where people viewed 5 profiles, sent 500 in-mails, which means they're all getting generic messages. So there's a lot of ways to get better messaging. With our conversation quality message, our tool, when we re-engage candidates, it actually will digest all of the previous conversations, and it will write a re-engagement email for us, and it'll say, Stephanie, how'd your dog Ozzy turn out with his vet visit that it pulled out of your last conversation? It makes them very personal, very cool. But even within LinkedIn, a simple thing that you can do within AI is, and if you don't even have an advanced LinkedIn license, just screen capture LinkedIn screen of a candidate. Go into whatever your favorite AI tool is and give them the job description that you're sourcing for. Upload the screen capture of the candidate and say, custom write me a message to send to this candidate, incorporating their background from their LinkedIn profile. And it'll write you a nice, pretty message, way prettier than I ever write. That's very customized to them and to the candidate. It's like, wow, they actually read my profile. They don't know the difference that ChatGPT read your profile. So there's a lot of things you can do like that really come across highly customized and create a better candidate experience. But don't blast a million people. That's your number one thing.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Jason, this one's actually, I think, also for you. So our healthcare system is new to using JobVite and CRM. Our team of recruiters in most cases are not using CRM to help with sourcing. What are some of the carrot ideas we could use to help them understand the value of why for embracing the use of a CRM to enhance success with sourcing?
Wow, that's a big question. So one of the realities that most healthcare organizations and even non-healthcare organizations have found out is that their vision of having every recruiter be a recruiter slash sourcer was a flawed vision. And part of it is getting back to what Terry talked about so much is rec loads. Do your rec loads really allow recruiters to do both? And so you have to really think about what the expectation is. And it's the reason why we very early on created a sourcing team. And not that the sourcing team does all the sourcing, but when in our major pipelines, we do the heavy sourcing because we needed that separate focus and allows our recruiters to not source as much on some of those same roles. So striking that appropriate balance is real important, and just even how you structure your CRM. One of the things that we did very early on in our CRM is we pulled some of our job-specific questions around nursing that we ask in the application process into the CRM to allow us to filter based off of them. And you can triangulate amazingly well. And so when you're sending the message to the right person in the first place, then the right message comes across, right? But if it's to the wrong person, it doesn't do you any good. We've all received one of those that you went, did you even look at my profile? I clearly am not the person that you're looking to hire, right? So it's a combination of those things. I mean, this could be a whole session on itself. So I'm hesitant to try to answer too much here, but I'd welcome anybody on the call if they want to connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out. We can chat some more on it.
Thank you, Jason. That was very helpful, I'm sure. We have a couple of great questions about AI in here as well. So how do you convince executives that AI is needed for support and also keep your head count? Does anyone want to take this one?
I'll jump in. I think I would first look at what's the problem that I'm solving and understand the audience that I'm going to justify this budget. And this is business case 101. I advise a lot of folks on how to build a business case for technology. And the AI is just the technology, right? So it's another tool that you're going to put in the tool bag or another application to help. And I think understanding, does that audience like qualitative results or quantitative results, or do I need to build an ROI or not? And then looking forward, if we're starting today with 10 recruiters and we're growing, the AI might mean we're making those 10 recruiters more effective and more strategic. And we're keeping those 10 recruiters and they're able to handle communication and outreach and engagement with more candidates than they were before this AI or whatever tool. And I would start thinking of it that way, but really understanding my audience and understanding what you're selling basically, and understanding how they view the world in making that case.
And I would add, that to George's point, know what you're trying to solve for, what your organization is trying to solve for. If it is a reduction in cycle time, if it's, having positions filled at all times, if it's reducing turnover, those are all hot buttons that have real dollars that you can attach to them and wouldn't necessarily lead to a reduction in recruiter headcount.
Great. We have time for one more question. Terry, this one's a follow-up for one of your earlier answers. Could AI be the reason for the lack of quality candidates versus a solution to finding more quality candidates?
Wow, that is a really good question. My immediate response was no, because I think that AI is generally good. We've talked about nuance a lot. I think that nuance, goes into just about everything that we do, and it's the finer points of that job description or the search that you're using to be able to get to the right candidates. But I don't think that AI gets it wrong. It may need to be adjusted. So that would be my immediate response. What a great question.
That's a great question.
So I'm going to contradict Terry a little bit on that front. One of the highest areas of investment in technology is systems to automate applications for candidates to companies. And in many cases, they're basically falsifying your resume to the point of, there's 8 companies that I found that do this, to the point of just matching you to the job description and flooding with applications. You literally buy a subscription that says, how many do I want to do a week? So on that front, on the application side, I think it is doing some to flood us with low quality applicants.
That's helpful. So we are coming up on. I want to thank all of our panelists and all of our attendees today. We will get a recording out to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.